Hello, and welcome to She Leads Biotech, the podcast that celebrates women leaders in the bioscience space. I'm your host, Sharon Cox, CEO and Managing Director of CNA International, based right here in New York. And each week I'll be talking to women leaders about their work, their triumphs and challenges, providing invaluable insight into how women can unlock their superpowers and succeed on their own terms. So whether you're navigating your own career path in bioscience or you're passionate about science and innovation, I hope you're empowered and inspired by each episode. Today's guest is a biomedical engineer whose passion for stem cell and gene therapy led to her co-founding Organabio, where, as Chief Business Officer, she drives the company's innovation, growth, and partnerships. She's a busy mum of 3 and a huge advocate for women supporting women, both in and out of the workplace. So please welcome Priya Baraniak. Priya, hi, good morning.
Good morning, Sharon.
And welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Where are you at this time of the morning?
I am in my home office in Westchester, Pennsylvania today.
Very nice, very nice. Okay, well, I know that we've had a very brief chat before, and I do know that you're a huge advocate of women's rights and women supporting women, and I really want to sort of get into that in the course of the show. But I want to quote in your own words that you've had a linear and unexpected career path. Can you talk about that? Can you tell me how you got from where you started to where you are?
Sure, yeah. So I have been fascinated by biomedical engineering since I was in 8th grade. I had a teacher who actually lit that flame through a project that she had assigned to our class. And I decided I wanted to be a biomedical engineer back then when I was 13. And I always thought as I entered college and then decided to pursue my PhD that I wanted to be a professor and have my own research lab, and that was the career for me. I went all the way through my postdoc and considered staying in academia, and at the 11th hour I decided to jump ship to industry and found a small clinical stage startup that was in the stem cell-based regenerative medicine arena, so right up my alley, and took a job there that was a science-based job. But because it was such a small company and a startup environment, I had a chance to wear many different hats there, from working with manufacturing to quality control, quality assurance, writing 510K filing for the FDA and interfacing with the FDA about that, actually writing and helping to prosecute patent filings. And so it really was very eye-opening. And in the 13 months I was there, I learned so much. And so that opportunity really was, although not ultimately traditionally successful in terms of the startup, was really a fantastic opportunity for me. And that came to a very abrupt end. And I was looking for what to do next when the opportunity to join a new startup presented itself to me, a company called Rooster Bio that had just been launched by its co-founders, John Rowley and Abhishek Kumar. And they reached out and said, hey, we just started this company. We have an opportunity to grow it and need someone with your background, your network, to come help start the company with us. And I thought, what a great value proposition, really believed in what they were doing, and said, okay, great. But the opportunity was really more on the business side, was what they needed me for, and also because I wasn't living proximal to where the company was. And so they said, we need you to go out and kind of build the sales and marketing engine and the business side, go do the business development. And I said, I'm a biomedical engineer. I don't know anything about any of that. And they said, well, you're intelligent. You'll figure it out. And we did, with their support and their trust, we figured it out. It took a lot of, talking to people, reaching out, talking to my network, relying on some of the introductions they made for me for people who had been in sales and marketing, Coursera courses and reading books like Crossing the Chasm to educate myself on this, and just some, blood, sweat, and tears to make it happen. And again, with their support, their guidance, and their belief and faith in me, we were able to do that. And so I never thought I'd be on the business side of things. It was never an intended career switch for me. It really was just very lucky to have the opportunity present itself and to be able to take advantage of that. And I find that I really very much enjoy being on this side of things, and marrying the science to the business and sitting at that intersection is really kind of what makes me tick. And if you had asked 13-year-old Priya, if you'd asked 23-year-old Priya, and if you'd asked 28-year-old Priya, I would have never said, yeah, I could see myself on the business side.
And so the one thing that fascinates me, because I've had this conversation with a number of women as we've been putting the podcasts together, and the same thing comes up. I unexpectedly did this, and this presented itself, and this opportunity showed up. And I can't believe that these things just show up for women. I don't hear men say it. So, I strove to get this and I went after that and, whatever. Yeah. Do we think we're just being a little more, I can't think of the word at the moment, it comes to me, but
humble or reticent in that?
Yeah, that actually did more, you guys did more to get that opportunity than you perhaps realise, but play it down so much?
Absolutely. I think you're right. As women, we have a tendency to play down what we do. We don't promote ourselves or say, like you said, well, I did this and I made it happen. And the reality is, for every single one of us, we never do anything on our own, right? It is because of the people whose shoulders we stand on, who came before us, and our support systems and our networks, that any of us, whether we're men or women, are where we are and are doing what we do. So I think it's very important to acknowledge that. To your point, I think these opportunities present themselves because you're right, of some of the steps that we've taken, right? In my case, it was having that network in regenerative medicine, in the mesenchymal stem cell arena, that I think prompted them to reach out to me and say, hey, we think you'd be the right person for helping us get this company off the ground, right? And so I think that, again, brings us back to that element of networking, the importance of your network, the importance of building community and fostering those relationships, because that's really ultimately what brings opportunity to you, is the little bit of serendipity of being in the right place at the right time, but ultimately knowing the right people and having the right people in your corner who believe in you and will say, she can do this and she's a good person for this.
And in your experience, how well do women network?
I think that women in general are very good at building relationships and building that community, right? Again, I think you get men and women of all different types and flavors and personalities.
Yep.
I don't think that women are at any disadvantage for networking or building a network. I think it's more introverts versus extroverts. And, I am an introverted extrovert or an extroverted introvert. I lie somewhere at that intersection. I mean, even after doing this, being on the business side for 11 plus years now, it's still hard for me, right? Networking events are painful. I have to hype myself up to go out and do it. But I've learned to kind of fake it, for the first 5-10 minutes until I hit my groove and am comfortable. I think where maybe we don't network as effectively is just in promoting ourselves, right? Yeah. And again, we're a bit more reticent in going out there and saying, hey, I did this, or I brought this to the table, or I made this happen, or I can, I've accomplished X, Y, and Z. There are some women who do that, and I'm always amazed by their ability to do that. And frankly, I won't lie, it takes me aback when I come across a woman like that. For a second, I'm like, whoa, because we're not used to hearing women do that.
Yeah, excellent. So tell me where you're at with Organabio right now. Let's talk through what you're doing for them.
Yeah, so Organabio is about 6 years old almost as a company and was founded by our non executive chairman back towards the end of 2018. And what we've built is, I think, a very robust business that really walks the product life cycle for a cell based product for cell therapy and gene therapy. And we've been very intentional about building some of the verticals that exist in the business. And then again, some have been serendipitous in nature. We've created the right set of tools and skills, expertise, and capabilities that we've had customers come to us and say, hey, you can do this. Can you apply it in this context? And then that has led to some fabulous business opportunities for us that have been huge revenue streams for the company. So Organabio today is about 35 people. The parent organization, we also have two wholly owned subsidiaries that are tissue sourcing businesses, but the vast majority of our employees are direct Organabio employees, but everyone falls under the Organabio umbrella. The company, for what I do in my role for the company, is help on the commercial side as the chief business officer. So helping to drive revenues, to build and maintain strategic partnerships and collaborations, and to help contractualize some of those or those deals and those business relationships, as well as sitting on the science side of the house as well, with co-leading process development and manufacturing with our vice president of operations, who is also a phenomenal scientist. And I serve as our laboratory director as well. So again, I'm really sitting at that intersection. Yes, but I get to really feed, I guess, all the nerdy side of me as well as the business side of me through what I'm doing for the organization, which is a lot of fun.
And what is the split within Organabio in terms of male, female roles and how they gel together?
It's a good question. I haven't gone back and looked at the numbers specifically right now, but we have a lot of female presence in the organization from the leadership team down, and we're very proud of that, right? Excellent. And we have some very strong women in the organization, which is great. Very accomplished women, and we have more junior women who I think are just phenomenal individuals who are so smart, who are so driven and motivated, and hopefully we are giving them the opportunity to mature and grow and then go out, whether it's grow within Organabio or go out and, forge a path elsewhere to continue to grow their careers and become the next generation of strong, capable women.
And that kind of touches on your women supporting women. I know when we briefly discussed before the importance of women lifting other women up. Yes. And really, yes. And I know that were you on a panel recently, or did you do a talk about that?
We had a panel recently as part of the Wyatt Global event that Facilitate ran. It was a 24-hour virtual event with lots of panel discussions and different presentations about women in advanced therapies. And I had put forth an idea for a panel, and we had a wonderful panel of women discuss, the stigmas around women's health in the workplace. And so we had a very candid and I think very important conversation about menstruation and menopause and how it affects women, the silent toll it takes, and the considerations that are needed just based on our biology. It's not because we're weaker, it's not because we're any less capable, but this is our inherent biology, right? And there are some considerations that I think are lacking in the workplace just because we don't talk about these things and we tend to sweep them under the rug. There has been a lack of research on this, right? And women's initiatives. I think we're seeing more and more investment in this space when it comes to this later season in women's lives. We're seeing more data emerge on the immense cost and toll it takes not only on women, their earning potential, their career progression, but also for companies and loss of really intelligent women, or the impact, it has on women who aren't getting that support.
And can you expand on that a bit more? What is the support that isn't being given, and how does it manifest, and where are the particular areas? Because I have to be honest, for me in a business, well, I'm a recruiter, so that's what I sit and do. The worst aspect for me is that I may have had a bad day, lost my rag at somebody, but then people would look and say, well, that's not really any different to what you might do from time to time. But
yeah.
Is there a particular impact that it has in women in gene and cell therapy?
Absolutely, right. So there are long days at the bench for scientists in this industry, and in a clean room setting where you are manufacturing a drug product or anything to GMP specifications that could then go into a human being, there is a lot that goes into the gowning, the entry, the exit. And ideally, once you enter that clean room setting, you don't want to leave until everything's said and done. So again, these are very long days where you're not taking breaks, let alone to eat or drink anything, but even to use the restroom, right? So for a woman who has her period, for instance, that can be a real issue, right? Where, hey, I might bleed through if I don't have a chance to go to the restroom and change my sanitary pad or my tampon.
Yep.
There's also, we've had the instance of a couple of women who've had UTIs because they haven't taken that restroom break. And so these are the things we don't typically talk about. And frankly, I didn't even think about it until my team raised some of these concerns or said, hey, Priya, I have to tell you, I have this going on and I'm not really sure. Right. And I, for one, was so grateful that they felt comfortable enough to come to me and have that conversation so that then I could kind of champion, hey, how do we make accommodations, right? Because we can't have our people working in these situations. We can't have this be a psychological burden for them or physiological burden for them. So I think the primary thing we can do, and this was a big part of what we talked about, is just create safe spaces where these conversations can be had. And part of that is destigmatizing, right? The whole thing around periods and menopause. For me personally, I shared that, I never understood that there's this whole later season of life, or that, you kind of think there's so much focus on puberty and childbearing and those years, right? And the considerations we need to make for maternity leave and to take care of women postpartum. And that's all great. And it's very, very important. But I was, completely unaware that the fact that there's this whole other season that also takes quite a physical and emotional toll on you. Perimenopause, I didn't even know was a thing, and that it can last, the whole process of going through menopause can last 15 years.
Yep.
And it's changing your sleep. It's changing your mental acuity at times, right? You're in a fog, you're in a haze. Again, the hormones affect how you're feeling physically, how you're feeling emotionally, how you're able to respond to stress. I would have never considered myself an anxious person. And in the last 2 years, at times I feel like I just suffer from chest crushing anxiety that comes out of nowhere and for no reason, right? And that's something new for me. And so again, I think just by being open, by being willing to have these conversations, to be willing to share our own journey, even though it's deeply personal, hopefully creates a safe space for others to come and have that conversation and to be able to say, yeah, I don't even know why, but today I'm just raging.
Yeah. Maybe we could just wear a sign that says it's today, back off.
Proceed with caution. I can't tell you why, but just proceed with caution.
Don't ask, just don't do. I mean, I don't know too much about treatments and various things for menopause here in the US, because by the time I moved here, I was in mid-50s and had already been through most, but I'd spent, I think, 5 years on HRT.
Mm-hmm.
which friends that I made here in the US were like, what is that? What is that? Or they didn't really seem to, it wasn't a thing here. Whereas in the UK, it's very much, oh, it's that time. Let's get on the HRT, whether it be a patch or a pill or whatever. What are the options? What are the treatments for women going through that course?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think the thing, and I'm still learning about this, I'm still unpacking this, is that there's no one size fits all solution. I think, again, there is some stigma around HRT. There's conflicting data about the effects of it. And I think, again, it really is a very personal conversation about your health history, your body, and what is the right option for you. I think a lot of our physicians are not maybe even properly equipped to have those conversations. For me, it took my going into my OBGYN after 2 years of telling him, I don't feel well. I am hemorrhaging 20 days a month. It is hard for me to function. And, oh, you're too young. Just take Advil. And I got to the point where I'm like, the next person who tells me to just take Advil, I'm going to roundhouse kick in the head. I finally went in last October and I said to him, I was like, if you don't do something to help me, I'm going to YouTube how to reach up there and pull it out myself. And he was like, okay, let's not do that. But, I had just reached my wit's end. And that was last October, and it still took months for anything to happen. And through that process, look, my OBGYN is a fantastic man. I love him. He has seen me through multiple miscarriages, the darkest of days, and he delivered my third baby, right, when we finally came through that. And he is just the kindest individual. But I really felt like there was so much, and I'm sure it's unintentional, almost gaslighting through this process of, this isn't going to hurt. This is easy. There aren't any nerves down there. Don't worry. And I wasn't given pain medication for a lot of things that I think if I were a man, I would have had all the drugs.
Yeah.
And instead I find myself lying on a table with it taking every fiber of my being multiple times, not just once, to not fling myself off the table in agony.
Yeah.
Right.
So still a long way to go.
Still a long way to go. And I think a lot of it is continuing education for doctors, which means we have to also invest the money in the research on women's health and these options and what options are available and bettering the options that are available. My doctor said to me, if you can figure out how to control this, you're a billionaire overnight. And I think that's very true, right? So we need to resource the research in this area, to disseminate that data, to properly, track it, trend it, make sure that we have the right inclusivity in terms of diversity of women in those data sets and in those clinical trials. Because again, there are racial differences, there are ethnic differences, there's cultural differences to consider, as well as physiological and biological differences. And again, it's a spectrum of age, right? I think we usually think about menopause as women in their 50s. But I'm learning, no, it could start as early as your late 30s, which is what happened to me, right? With this process. And so we need to make sure that the clinical trials are designed to take that into account. And then we need to educate doctors and we need to educate women to advocate for themselves based on that.
Right. I mean, we certainly have come away. I know my own mother-in-law, God rest her soul, but they found out much, much later. But in her mid-30s, she started to have various symptoms of things that we now know, menopause symptoms. And the doctor had actually advised my father-in-law to put her in a sanitarium. And that was the solution, because she'd obviously gone do-lally-tap.
She's hysterical. And she's crazy. And it's just all these hormones and changes, and you don't even know yourself at moments. It really feels like I could crawl out of my skin. I could just rip myself apart and crawl out of my skin right now, the way I'm feeling.
Yeah, and in 50 years, people aren't ready to lock us up in sanitariums just yet anyway. So
we
I
have
guess
come a long way.
There is something that we've come.
And you go to, my doctor was telling me there's a gynecological museum, I think in the Philly area is what he said. And you go there and you look at some of the instrumentation that was used, back in the 1700s, the 1800s. It was barbaric. So I was like, okay, well, I'm glad they're not using that anymore. But I still think we have a long way to go. And we can always do better on every front. And I think that's the beauty of it, is each generation picks up that charge and says, we can be better, we can do better. And hopefully by, again, being more willing to have these conversations, sharing these experiences, although deeply personal and not something that we're not raised or groomed to be comfortable talking about these things. Like, oh, you hide it. Even now when you're going to the bathroom, you like hide your pad or your tampon, right?
Yeah.
Rather than running around, waving it around. Hopefully we empower the next generation. They hear more about this. My mom never talked about it. Our mothers, our grandmothers never shared this. They went through it silently. And like you said, sometimes we're mislabeled as being psychos when really they were just dealing with these kinds of changes that were not understood. So hopefully the next generation will be more empowered to have these conversations to figure this out even more than we were.
And I think it's great, even television commercials.
Yeah, we're starting to see commercials about this now.
And when I saw, I was like, whoa, that's come away, having the conversation behind it rather than just, pouring blue ink on something and expecting that to tell the story.
And I saw a menopause commercial during the Super Bowl this year, which I had never seen before. And I thought, wow, look at that. That's awesome. And we're seeing some celebrities like Naomi Watts and Gwyneth Paltrow, start to talk about this and invest in businesses, female-led businesses and female-founded businesses that are in this arena. And so, we are seeing a shift. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. We are.
And so I know that you're very big on the importance of supporting women, and you seem to do a lot of speaking everywhere. You're very popular. I read on I don't know if it was a panel or a speech that you did regarding advocating and advancing women's rights in America. What was that all about?
It was, I think, over 2,000 South Asian women who came together. I don't want to get political, but it was, fueled by a political cause that we were coming together around. We were talking about, a lot of these different things came up that we have seen, some of our basic fundamental rights be threatened over the last few years. And what are we going to do, right? We have to come together. We have to rise up together. We have to band together. We have to put aside some of our differences, whether they're political or religious or whatever it might be, socioeconomic, to come together. I'm also a big advocate for giving voice to people who don't have that voice, right? We're educated women. We have a lot of opportunity that has been given to us, sometimes, again, just by the luck of drawing the right number when it came to birth and where we were born and to whom and under what circumstances. And there are a lot of women in the world who don't have those opportunities, who don't have that right. And, whether it's women's rights, whether it's what I do in my career or what I do socially and giving back and community service, that's something that is always on my mind, that I have been very lucky in my life and given so much opportunity. And I see that as a mandate to use that for good, right? And to give voice and to support others who have not had that same opportunity and haven't had that same luck. Because a lot of what we do is what we do and the effort you put in, and, nothing just comes to you. I think is very true, Sharon. But you have to also be humble enough to realize that there is a big element of luck, and there's a big element of all the people around you and the environment that you're in that enable you to do that.
And I guess the more things are spoken about, it's like anything, isn't it? The more it's spoken about, the more it empowers those women who perhaps didn't have a voice and were encouraged to then find their voice to help other women who don't have a voice, for people to build.
And some of it is just representation, right?
Yep.
And seeing someone who looks like you or that you can relate with and saying, hey, if she can do it, then maybe I can do it too.
Right.
And so that representation is really important. You remind me of one thing that came up during our Wyatt Global panel, and I think it's important to note this as part of this conversation and to bring some more light to this topic. So my dear first mentor in the space, Doris Taylor, who is just a powerhouse of a scientist and woman in the cardiac repair regeneration arena, was kind enough to join this panel when I invited her to join it. And she brought to light, LGBTQ issues in this space. And that when we think about now periods, childbearing, perimenopause, menopause, and women's issues, women's rights, women, the classic definition of who is a woman is also evolving in today's world, right? And we have to take that into account as we, again, create safe spaces, as we look to make accommodations that are inclusive of everyone, that someone who is a woman may not have been born a woman, may be going through a transition, may have transitioned, may choose not to transition, but still identify as a woman. Yep. And so how do we make it safe? How do we make it inclusive for all of these people? And I hadn't thought about that, quite honestly. And when Doris said it, it was so eye-opening for me in that, hey, you're right. I have been thinking about this in the definition of classic definition of woman, and I need to expand my mindset and my outlook to be more inclusive.
Right. And what impact, do you feel that there's any specific impact in that within business in biotech or within the bio space or the life sciences space? Any particular challenges around that or no?
No, I mean, not. Maybe some people have had a different experience. I haven't had any such experience where this has been a challenge or, I think that one of the things I'll say about Organabio, like we pride ourselves on having a lot of women, a lot of strong, accomplished women throughout the organization and all levels of the organization, is I think that we also have a very inclusive environment and a very welcoming environment. We couldn't care less, I think, about anyone's gender identity or sexual preferences, etc. Yep. And that's how it should be. It should be a non-issue, really. Yep. But again, when we think about the implications, I think, for clinical trial design and how we treat patients then with various drugs and whether we're making decisions based on clinical trial design and data that is inclusive or not. Yep. And then the workplace itself, this is only going to continue to evolve and continue to be something that we should be taking into consideration. And I think, again, for it's a newer thing, right? I think for my kids in even middle school, high school, they're already talking about gender fluidity and, gender identity, and their friends are here and there. And it's something they're growing up with that is just part of the norm for them, which I think is wonderful. But for someone like me, who's a little bit older, I have to make it a point to be intentional about thinking about that, right? It doesn't come as naturally. I think also I've noticed more and more that there is a tendency to call women girls, even when they're fully grown women, right? And we don't call men boys, once they're men, they're men. Yeah. And so that's something that I've picked up on recently. And it's not even meant. Sometimes the people who are saying it, I know that they are the most genuine people. They are supportive of women. It's just these things that we do that we're not even aware of sometimes that, I think can have bigger implications when we stop to think about them.
And so therefore the importance of keeping conversations going, keeping things talking. Yeah. So probably for another episode somewhere down the road when we figure that one out.
Yes.
So what does the future look like for Priya?
I don't know. That's a great question. And, I don't have a set answer for that. And I think that's okay. I had my whole life planned out in 8th grade. And when my life took an unexpected turn with my first startup, being laid off, it was the first time I was so out of my element. I didn't know what to do because I had everything planned out. I knew I was going to double major in biomedical and electrical engineering. Then I was going to go get my PhD in biomedical engineering. And then I was going to go do a postdoc and I was going to be a professor. And sure, that took a little bit of a turn, but I still had the next thing lined up.
Yeah.
I think I suffer from always having the next thing or always seeking the next level and leveling up. And I think that I should embrace and lean into not knowing what's next.
Okay.
And that is probably a good thing for me, right? Rather than this constant what's next, what's achievement unlocked, next, achievement unlocked, next. And just being happy with where I am. And overall, I am very happy with where I am. I love what I get to do every day. I love the impact that what we do at Organabio is having and can have on the industry and ultimately on bettering lives and saving lives.
Yep.
So, there isn't anything that I'd say I'm really wanting. Ultimately, I think if I'm able to step back and not have to work, with 3 kids to put through college and
that's unlikely
and all of that, right? It's not going to be for a while. But if and when I'm able to do that, I would love to really turn my attention more to philanthropy and nonprofits and using my time to really further some of these passions that I have, right, in passion projects and causes. I think.
To continue to advocate for women. Yeah.
Yes.
Don't ever stop doing that. We need Priyas in this world to continue to do that.
No, I won't.
Oh. Well, listen, our time is coming to an end. I'm very conscious of your time. Before I let you go, just one final question. What piece of advice would you give to a future biologist, somebody who thinks they have their life planned out and where they want to go and they want to be a bio leader? What piece of advice would you give?
I would say absolutely pursue that passion, be relentless in pursuing it, and believe that you are capable of doing it, but maintain a flexible mindset along the way, because it will not be a linear path and there will be a lot of, back and forth and steps back to make progress, and it will be circuitous in nature. And if you can learn to have fun with that, to learn along the way, new opportunities will open themselves up for you, right? But I think for any young girls who are we need more women in STEM. We need more women in government. We need more women in leadership positions at the C-suite and on boards.
Yep.
And so keep breaking those ceilings, know that you can shatter those ceilings, and know that there are always allies out there for you, men and women, who are going to help you do it and be championing you along the way. So rely on those people, call them, pick up the phone, call them, ask for their help, ask for them to share their stories with you or give you advice. Make it your own, right? There's no right or wrong way of doing it. Much like parenting. The only parenting advice I will give new parents is survive and do what's right for you to survive. Yeah, exactly. That's the only parenting advice I will give. And similarly, I think for career advancement, do what's right for you. Be true to yourself. As long as you can sleep at night and look in the mirror and feel like you have done the right thing and operated with the integrity and the personal ethic that you hold yourself to, that is most important above all else. And be a champion for others. Do not ever climb over any, and that's something I'm very, very particular about. Women who do not support women or people who do not support other people are not my people. Someone else's advancement never detracts from what you are doing. Right. So never covet someone else's success, never covet someone else's advancement, and never withhold help if you can help someone else.
And learn from it.
And learn from it. Yeah. And I believe the universe returns all of that to you.
Yeah. Well, fantastic piece of advice, Priya. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And hopefully we can get together and chat some more and keep the conversation going. I look forward to following up who you're going to be talking to next in your strive to move women forward.
Thank you, Sharon, for the opportunity. It's been a pleasure.
And me too. Look forward to it again.
Have a lovely day.
Take care. Well, that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. She Leads Biotech is brought to you by CNA International USA, a woman-owned boutique search firm based in New York. If you're looking to hire talent for your company or want support in achieving your career goals, please reach out to me at contact@cnaint.com. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. And remember, the success of every woman should be an inspiration to another. So don't be afraid to share yours. Thanks again for listening. Until next time.